Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Sean Hayes, and this is episode 354, and we're here to bring you the latest and greatest gaming news of the week. So apologies for the late start for those who are watching live. It was trying to get the kiddos down, and it's set championships day, so everything's a little off the cuff today. So we've got some news topics, and then later I'm going to do a tournament report for it was the set championships at our local game store. So that's going to take the place of the reviews. So because it's kind of a review. As a taste, is I did get top 8. So I have the shiny, this $220 Woody card that I'm just gonna throw in the deck and treat it as if it was, the $5 version. Because it's cardboard. So all right. Because it is late, I'm not gonna draw things out a bit. So this may be a bit of a shorter episode. So just fair warning on that, folks. But I promise I will still deliver the information to you. So let's get right into it. All right. So first up, sad news for Bungie. So we've reported previously that they were they were ending support for Destiny 2. And that there were likely going to be layoffs. That has been confirmed and reported on by both Game Informer and IGN, and I'm sure a bunch of other publications have reported on it as well. So the studio has announced a significant amount of layoffs. Most of the Destiny teams, some Marathon developers, and Sony Interactive employees that whose roles were devoted to providing support for Bungie. There was a filing in Washington State. It was like a labor filing that noted 292 employees in that state alone were going to receive layoff notices. One such notice was like Chief Vision Officer, which could potentially be like one of Bungie's co-founders, is also getting the axe. It's not great. It's not great. And like both Bungie and Sony were trying to spin it as just like, trying to position the company in the best position to weather, upcoming challenges and blah, blah, blah. Essentially, as Destiny 2, got older, and they, starting to near what seemed to be the end of its lifespan. It didn't perform as well, and I guess those metrics were enough that Sony decided to pull the plug. Unfortunately, so. And because of that, they are the latest in a series of like high profile companies laying off a bunch of employees. It was also noted that between like 2023 and 2024, they laid off like another 300 employees. So for a company that was theorized to have maybe 1,000 employees, that's 600 right there, folks. And notably, like that filing for the 292, that's Washington State only. So that doesn't account for any out-of-state employees. So yeah, that's rough. That's rough. And I feel for them. It's also a bad time to get laid off because like people aren't hiring. Like especially in the games industry. Is there aren't jobs to get. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little worried as to the industry as a whole, because it seems like we just keep seeing more and more of this happening, where it's not the the not unfortunate normal of layoffs happening after a project wraps, but then like potentially getting rehired back for a new project. It just seems like a lot of companies are just bleeding employees, and whether that was like they overexpanded during the pandemic, and are still retracting, or if a lot of this is also related to something we're going to talk about later of if their positions are just being rendered obsolete due to automation, generative AI, language learning models. But notably, this is like all departments are being hit. Like it's not one specific type of job role. It's like across the board, from creative to programming to development to back office to like interdepartmental support. Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately we're starting it off with actually a lot of the news that we have this week is not super positive. So, unfortunately about that, sorry about that, folks. So next up, I alluded to it, is AI and language learning models and everything. Epic Games. So Tim Sweeney conducted interviews with both like PCGamer and IGN. And I read through the interviews. They largely seemed focused on they did like a developer keynote, particularly with like Unreal Engine 6. And I was going to talk about it last week and then ended up cutting it as a topic. I think I cut it as a topic, but Tim Sweeney expressing his desire for essentially like taking your Fortnite skins and having them be available on like any game that uses Unreal Engine 6. And it basically comes back to like the whole metaverse idea and NFTs. Like we're kind of back to the whole NFT thing of just, but instead of it being like this nebulous architecture, it's just like Tim Sweeney saying, "Oh, we want everybody to use Unreal Engine 6. And because everybody will be using Unreal Engine 6, there is no reason for us to not have like certain skins and cosmetics and stuff not be transferable between games that are using our engine." And like, sure, it might be more achievable, but at the same time, it just feels like another wave of the NFT vaporware nonsense, of just like a pie in the sky of like, oh, just because like if a character has, or if a game has human characters, then they'll be using the same architecture for those characters across every game. And therefore, like, why wouldn't you be able to just slap a different skin on it that you purchased in Fortnite or whatever? So like that was part of it. And then the other part was just his kind of pro LLM generative AI stance, specifically in programming, which, he kind of danced around the idea of like the environmental impact, and seemed to just kind of blame like consumers on the fact that they don't like generative AI. So yeah, all in all, it didn't really do anything to endear Tim Sweeney to my sensibilities at this point. Yeah, it just feels like he has kind of bought into like the social media nonsense that was going around during like the whole metaverse NFT fad. And it seems he might just be riding another wave of fads, uh, presumably to sucker investment firms out of money. But it also sounds like Unreal Engine 6 will push even more sort of AI assisted, and like it's not even the right term for it, but of like having Claude assisted architecture in there. Which, you know, that's great. That's clearly what audiences want right now. And yeah, pushing back on audiences because, you know, he thinks it's a PR problem. And that people just need to get used to it being adopted is really not the way to go. So yeah. You know, and it was like the comparison that he made was, well, you know, in previous generations, you know, like it was like a BitTorrent was a problem, and you know, and then everybody just accepted it. So this is just going to be something that we have to accept, and it's like that's no, like equating the adoption of language learning models and you know things like Claude and ChatGPT and stuff like that to people pirating games on BitTorrent, and you just have to assume that as a cost of business. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about it. And in particular, one of the things that was asked was his thoughts on cost of hardware and whether that is impacting like game development, you know, in particular with like these, you know, getting more advanced engines of, you know, how do they feel knowing that like a growing populace it can't afford hardware components to be able to play the games that are releasing using this platform. And you know, kind of foreseeing this as a temporary problem that might last like the next 2 to 3 years, kind of a thing. And it's like that's a long time in like the game industry. Like if your consumers can no longer get components, and developers, like if nobody can get those components, and like right now, if your consumers can't afford those components, they're not going to be able to play newer games that require them. So yeah, I read through the interviews and it was just like, I don't know. It seemed like maybe he's overcompensating. Like maybe he paid a little too much money to have this stuff integrated and is now like desperately trying to get people on board to recoup some of that money. I don't know. But yeah, so if you weren't aware, Epic Games is just fully on board with incorporating AI into the development process. So that's great. Super great. For those who have a hard time detecting tone, I'm trying to lay sarcasm on super thick with that. But let's move on. So next up, Grand Theft Auto 6. Rockstar confirmed that it will cost $80 for the base edition. And then the Ultimate Edition will cost $100. It will include in-game items. The physical version of this game is going to be a code in a box. There is no disc. And I guess there may be some story circulating on how, like, you know, there may be a disc version coming. I guess IGN had an article about it, and that's based on like some support ticket response that like didn't actually confirm, but just said like something about a physical release. Which the physical release is just a shell. It's you get a box and it's got a code in it. So that's really concerning. And like trying to cite as like media costs as part of it. It's like, man, discs are still super cheap. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. That's and the thing is like I'm not super enthusiastic about like all like the Final Fantasy VII remake on Switch 2. Like I'm not super stoked about it being like a cartridge that gives you, that when it's inserted, like you download it to the like you don't run it off of the cartridge. You run it it was like a download cartridge or whatever. But like for all intents and purposes, like you still have to insert the cartridge in order to play the game. And then when you're done, you can offload it, right? And then give the cartridge to somebody else. So like it still kind of acts like physical media. It just requires this it requires, servers to be operational. Whereas this is just a digital download. That's like there's not even a physical thing that you could then reload it back onto to give it to somebody else. So, and then the fact that they're doing that and it's costing $80. So yeah, I hope everyone that was excited for that. There you go. Yeah, I'm not. I don't care, but it's easily going to be one of the biggest launches this generation because it's Grand Theft Auto. So it is notably very noteworthy, especially that they're not doing physical media at all for this kind of release, where like Rockstar, some projections are that it's going to sell 50 million copies. Like you could afford to put it on discs. Like don't. That just sounds like squeezing more money out of it to appease investors, maybe. So yeah. Also, both versions, so both the digital download and the physical version, will be available for purchase a week before the actual release date. But you can't play it. It's just to preload the download on your device. To which I like, it's so it's like you're gonna let people buy it, but then not play it for a week. It boggles my mind as to what they're doing with this. So yeah, have fun with that, folks. Our final bit of news is the Steam Machine. We got prices for them, folks. Got prices. On the lowest end, it's $1,049 US. That is a model that has 512 gigabytes of storage, of internal storage, and does not include a Steam controller. You're going to pay over $1,000 for a machine to not have it include a controller. Now, if you do want a controller, so basically all of the versions have like SKUs that are with and without controllers. And if you want a controller, it costs extra. The most expensive version is $1,428. It's a 2 terabyte hard drive, or it has 2 terabytes of storage, and it includes a Steam controller. for $1,400, I could just get a new PC. So this is clearly a thing that is aimed at collectors, basically. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna spend, kind of budget PC money, why would you get a Steam console instead of just getting a budget PC? So yeah. One thing I forgot to mention, Steam related, but in the so Steam has been putting the sort of like made with AI label on stuff on games that like were software or whatever that incorporates generative AI on the store. And that's like another thing that Mr. Sweeney is upset about. He thinks it's largely irresponsible of Steam to use that label in its store. So I mean, and Valve did specify that the cost is as high as it is because of components. But, naturally, they did not indicate any inclination to lower the prices if hardware prices come back down. So just be aware, like, you're probably stuck with these prices. They're not likely to go down unless they're doing like a fire sale if nobody buys them. So glad to see that it's likely gonna do as well as the previous incarnation of the Steam box. So that is going to wrap up for the news this week. So let's get ready to do an info dump about this set championships. All right, so this is a tournament report. June 27th, 2026. So our local game store had our set championships today for Wilds Unknown, set 12 of Lorcana, of Disney Lorcana trading card game. So we had 10 players. 3 of those players were actually local players. 7 players were from out of town. Out of the 3 local players, I ended up with the best record. I placed 3rd. Another one of our local players placed 5th, and then another one, unfortunately, placed 10th. So kind of a frustrating day. With that, we kind of like it better when local players do better. And just there was problems. So, decks. So deck spread of the 10 players. So we had 2 Blurple. So Sapphire, Amethyst. We had 2 dogs. So Amber, Emerald. We had 1 Amber Amethyst player, 1 Amethyst Steel player. We had 2 Ruby Amethyst players. And 2 Amber Steel players. All right, so I covered Blurple, Amber Steel, Ruby Amethyst, Amber Emerald. Yep, so that covers the 10. So I did not stick around to see the final match. But it was either a traditional Steel song or dogs. So, although the dogs player got into the top 4, or sorry, into the finals. Yeah, got into the finals via a double concession by the same opponent. So it was in round 4 that opponent just flat out conceded, and then when the top 4 standings were posted, then just automatically conceded again. So very nice player. It was a little frustrating just to have people who showed up and then didn't want to play, like didn't want to finish like halfway through. But you know, I keep telling myself I can only control how I do, like, and the decisions that I make. So, just because how that all went down, like, could have had another local get into the top 4, so we could have two locals in the top 4. Yeah. So, I was running a, so I was playing Amber Steel. It was not my original intent for the set championships, but due to some circumstances around getting cards shipped or not in time, I ended up pivoting back to it. It was doing really well for me on the ladder on duels.inc, where it is a version of Steel Song that is using toys. So it uses Woody, Jesse, Bullseye, Ham. That might be it. That might be all the toys that it uses. Because it uses like 2 versions of Woody. So yeah. Ultimate, it did pretty well. It was up until the semifinals was, I went 3-1. And unfortunately, I made a bunch of really boneheaded mistakes that cost me my top 4 match, because I went into the top 4 as the top seed, and I felt really good about that. And then it was I mulliganed. So I won the die roll, elected to go first, and then without thinking, mulliganed as if I was going second, and ended up it completely cost me the game. And then it was game 2 was just an absolute bloodbath. And there was just nothing I could do. And it was against an opponent that I went 2-0 against in the first round. So that particularly stung a bit. But yeah, other local players were playing a Flinger Dingers that was doing pretty well. But unfortunately, due to the way the placements worked out, I had to play against him in round 4, which I was trying to avoid playing the other local players, just so that we had the best chance of like getting multiple people into the top 4. And then our other one was playing Blurple, and unfortunately he went 0-4. His deck just completely worked against him all day. And it was a coin toss to decide on that deck. And then his first match was against Dogs, which is the worst matchup for Blurple. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy that I made 3rd place. I'm not super stoked as to how everything went down. And I really thought I had a decent shot at getting the mat again for the first time since set 7. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was set 7. Maybe it was even set 5. I don't know. It's been a while. Since I came in on top. But I made out with an extra $10. I got the foil promo. My concern was that we were going to get a ton of people who are looking for the foil promo because scalpers have entered Lorcana. And now the foil promo is like, usually foil tournament promos are like in the 40, maybe like $30 to $50 range. On like the 30 range, if they're not great, and then the $50 range if they're very playable. And the past couple of ones have not been very playable. So we were expecting, this might have been like a $50, $60 one. And because, prospectors have come in, it's $220. And so, yeah, there was a big concern that we were going to get an influx of people from all over, which that wasn't the case. It was just they all, it was basically a lot of folks in another community, like all just coming as one big group to our store. So yeah, all in all, it was, it was okay. Like everybody was very, very nice, very friendly, everything. We didn't have any, no ruling issues, no judge issues or anything like that. As far as I can tell, there was like a couple minor things, but ultimately they didn't change the outcome. And it wasn't like hidden information revealed. It was just like procedural stuff on the board that ended up not changing anything. So, but yeah, it's for me, the number of times that I've made it into the top 4, it was the only local to make it into the top 4. I mean, this was a faster one, so like I had an extremely fast 2 losses for my semifinals match. But I mean, I left at around 6:30, so it was like 4.5 hours. There have been times when I've been there and finished the finals at like 9 o'clock, like store closing, where it was just me and my opponent, and like it just felt very lonely and isolated, like to not have other people there. And it tends to happen, if I end up being the only person, the only local who ends up in the top 4. And honestly, the past couple times that I've done it, it's been like there have been a group of people on the other side as like all part of the same group. And so that there's a little bit of intimidation that happens with that, and a little bit of just isolation. That doesn't feel great. So it would be nicer if we could get more locals into the top spots, but unfortunately stuff just didn't work out that way today. So yeah, but also we could certainly use more people in our local community getting involved. So if you are in the local community, around so the local game stores, Mana Crypt, in the Berkshires, and you're thinking about trying out Lorcana, absolutely, you can feel free to reach out. We have a very friendly community. It's a wonderful space, very inclusive space, enthusiastically inclusive space. And has been remarked from lots of members in like the local LGBTQ plus community of being like a very like safe space kind of a thing. So if you're interested in getting into Lorcana, please feel free to reach out. We are always happy to have more people. And, having more local players means we might have more local players for set championships, which means that someone within the community can walk away with a very cool championship mat. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, and as far as my I played against the other Steel Song. They were playing a more traditional Steel Song deck, so I did 2-0 against them round 1. Round 2, I played the Amber Amethyst, so it was like the Dale, sort of aggro deck. 2-1 against that one. And that game, my deck was like those first 2 matches, my first 2 rounds, my deck was firing on all cylinders. And it was doing everything that it needed to do. I went 1-2 against Blurple, and that was just the cards just didn't work out the way I wanted it to. That also happened to be the player who then conceded twice, and even thought about, like, even though she seemed to consider whether or not she wanted to report that she had won during our match. So that it's a little frustrating with that. And then I played against the Flinger Stingers and went 2-1 against that. Which guaranteed top seed going into the top 4, and then I had to replay the Steel Song and I completely whiffed it. So yeah. It's one of those where had it been more of a slugfest of like back and forth, and it was like a 2-1 like match loss or something, that might have felt better than just like I completely boned it and then could not recover after that. And I was kind of tilted just on how everything shook out at that point. Just because I don't like when my friends are having rough goes at the tournaments, because I feel bad, because they deserve better. So I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. But so that's how things shook out at Mana Crypt today. So yeah, I mean, we had 2 local players walk away with foil promos. So, but we'll have to see for future set championships if this is going to continue to be a thing. It sounds like a lot of stores that are sort of within like an hour have stopped doing Lorcana, so a bunch of people they don't have any other place to go. So it sounds like it just, if the weekend is free, they're gonna start driving out. I don't know. I mean, it's good for the store and good for the game, but yeah, we already have players that don't come to set championships, and that's sad. So, all right, well, such a riveting episode this week, man. I hopefully next week we've got some more upbeat news. But for now, we're gonna call things for this week. Thank you all for joining me. And I said this was gonna be a shorter episode, and it's still gonna be pretty long. So if you want to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, you can head on over to 8bitadventures.com. If you want to help support that content, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Big shout out and thank you to all of my current patrons for your continued support. Our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And with that, we are done for the week. I have to go get ready for a wedding tomorrow because this is a very busy weekend. So I will bid you all a good week. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.